Hello friends, it's Candence and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, you guessed it, we're going over my left coin slot this time. Before I begin, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like body mods, tattoos, piercings, hair. I do videos on all that, but especially piercings. That's like my main jam. So leave a comment down below if you have any questions, anything you'd like me to make a video about. Just comment down below and I can surely do that. Well, a lot of the preliminary what is a coin slot type of things, you can see a lot of that in my first video, but I will go over it real quick again, maybe a little bit of a shorter version. A coin slot is basically, I'll show a picture, it's a little oval slit cut in your ear so that you can stack rings or jewelry in this like hole in your ear basically. But if you want a little bit more detail about what a coin slot is, definitely check out my first video. I will link it up there. So for my left coin slot, obviously I got it second. My first coin slot was on my right ear, so it was a little bit simpler to find the artist because I went to the same one. So I just emailed the same artist, explained that I wanted another coin slot and just booked an appointment to get it. Once I got there, I basically went the same as the first one. This time I went with my boyfriend instead of my mom. It was such a struggle that day because there was so much traffic and we left later than I wanted to, so I ended up being like 30 minutes late and I felt terrible. Yeah, that was just terrible for me. At least the artist is a really nice guy and I hope he doesn't remember. I hope he doesn't hate me. But anyway, this coin slot went pretty much about the same as the first. When I showed up, I told him exactly what I wanted. I wanted this one to be in a way different position than my first one and a lot different than I've seen other coin slots. Now you can get coin slots in a lot of different positions on your ear. You could even get a slot in your conch. Like I have a big hole cut in my conch, but you can get like a little ovular kind of shape in your conch area. I've heard of people, I'm not sure if I've ever seen it, but I heard of someone who wanted a slot on their forward helix, but I'm not sure if that's like an easy thing to do or if it was ever actually done. But you know, the idea is there. So my idea for this one was to have the coin slot, as you can see, towards the top of my ear. That way, I don't know, because I already had my helix piercing and I already gave up the helix piercing on this ear because it's kind of within the coin slot. So I can't use that piercing hole. I wanted it to be above that. A major reason for me wanting it on my right ear is because I had a big flat area on the side. This ear is pretty round, while this ear has like kind of a point going on. So the rings on this ear kind of fill the gap and make it rounder. But since this ear was already round, I didn't want to get something really symmetrical that would sort of make my ears look even more asymmetrical, if that makes any sense. It would just make it bulge out even more when this ear already sticks out, I think, a little bit more than the other. So I wanted this one on the top of my ear. I thought it would look really cool. This ear is like a lot bigger than my other ear, I think, at least like the area on the flat, and I just felt like, I don't know, my idea was that it would be kind of like a crown for my ear. I don't know if that's a little bit weird, but it's like, I think I had an Instagram post where it was like my ear crowning coin slot, or maybe it was on like Reddit or something that I said this is my ear crowning coin slot, and you know, I feel like it looks super classy and I love the position. Anyway, I'm on a major tangent. So I told him the position, which was a little bit different. I hadn't seen anyone who had their coin slot in this particular spot. So because of the more unique position, by the time we got into the procedure, again, this one was the same as the first one in terms of the whole thing was pretty much like a dental procedure. Someone's all up in your face, uncomfortable, disturbing sounds and noises of like crunching ears right in your ear, and it's very unpleasant. Beyond the standard of what happened during my first one, there was a little bit of extra sort of drama. The first thing being was it was a little bit more difficult for him. Now I think the cutting part was kind of the same, just because, you know, like cut the holes, and then you cut out your little like peanut shape of cartilage, and then you have to start sewing it closed. So like the cutting part was the same, but it was the sewing that created more of a problem. The stitching, not sewing. So as he was trying to stitch it, it was just a little bit more of an awkward angle. He was definitely very capable, but I remember him saying that it was a little bit more awkward and it's taking a little bit longer just because of the position, because it's like right up against my head. Like if it was on the outer rim a little bit more, it would be all fully visible, all fully accessible, but since the slot was right up against, like close to my skull, it made it a little bit more like difficult to reach those areas and see everything that he was doing, I think. So that made the process take a little bit more time. Another thing that made it a little bit more of a struggle and take a little bit more time is I used to have some piercings in the same spot or the same area. If you look here, I think 2 of the piercings, I think the middle one and the top one, I have some scar tissue. I had those piercings and I took them out and they were scarred over. So these piercings were not fully healed when I retired them. So when they healed after I removed them, they had scar tissue. They have like little knots of scar tissue, just like if you had old earlobe piercings and you can feel the little knot. There's little scar tissue balls. So I think that scar tissue may have contributed to maybe the cutting maybe being a little bit abnormal. I'm not sure. I wasn't watching. But the scar tissue definitely had an effect on the stitching, because I remember he was saying it was taking a lot longer because I kept bleeding, because normally during the procedure there's not too much bleeding, especially once the stitching occurs. It stops any bleeding that might be occurring. But the scar tissue, since it is not able to like stop bleeding like the other tissue is able to, it basically just wouldn't stop bleeding. So every time he would try to get a stitch, he would have to dab blood, and then the blood would just fill up the whole slot again. Like if you ever, I don't know, if liquid gets somewhere, you know how if you put a drop somewhere and it's already wet around, it like fills up the whole area. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but basically the blood was kind of filling up the whole coin slot, like it was pooling like and covering all the stitches. So these little tiny spots of piercings on my ear just kept bleeding and making it hard for him to see what he was doing as he was trying to make the stitches. So it just made the whole process a little bit longer and quite a bit more uncomfortable, because the scar tissue also hurt quite a bit more. But in the end, I think it worked out pretty well. This one was a little bit different than my last one in terms of healing. I'd say it was actually a little bit easier. Now, I think this ear didn't bruise the same way my other ear did. I'm sure there was probably a little bit of a bruise, but my right ear was like purple, like straight up dark purple, which was awesome. And I wish this one turned out quite as purple, but it didn't. So it wasn't as purple, which is fine. I guess I'm not asking for bruises, but it was just uncomfortable. It was the same thing. By the time I was on my way home, it was starting to get sore and uncomfortable. And like, you know, that warm, like really sore kind of raw feeling, which I was expecting. But basically the whole process went exactly the same, where I had the folded band-aid to put in my ear, make sure it didn't get like clotted up, like filled with blood or anything, like keep that gap, keep it dry. I don't think he gave me any of those like little shower ear cap things, but I wasn't going to use them anyway. So I just kept my ear dry and out of the stream of the shower, and everything was fine and dandy. And while the scar tissue caused a little bit more problems during the procedure, I don't think it really affected the healing of the piercing at all. It healed pretty much the same as the first one. I didn't have my like scaly lizard skin experience, like my snake shedding type of thing. So as I was editing, I looked at some of my old pictures from when I got it done. Well, I just didn't remember. Apparently, I can't show a picture because it's way too bloody. I got it done the 22nd of May, and I think it was like 4 or 5 days later. From the picture, it looks like I was in the car after work or something, and my ear had like oozed out some blood during the day. So I would say the scar tissue definitely did affect the healing, because the one ear bruised, so that means all the blood that was going to come out stayed in. But on this ear, wait, is it the right ear? Yeah. But this ear, since I'm assuming there's scar tissue, it was harder to seal up that bleeding, I assume, which is probably why it didn't go all purple, because it bled all out. And yeah, apparently when I work, I think my ears get like inflamed. They just get red. So while I was at work, like running around the supermarket the whole day, it was like oozing blood throughout my shift. Go ahead and check out my Instagram. I'm gonna post a picture of my Coinslot when I upload this video, and I'll put the bloody ear picture as the third picture to the right. That way, if you want to see how bloody it was on like the 5th day, you can check that out. And another thing is, I realized, because from looking at the pictures, I should have looked at the pictures before instead of just making things up, but you know, I got a bad memory. Anyway, as I was looking at the pictures, I also saw the date of when I first started stacking the rings without stitches in, and it was June 5th. So it looks like I waited a solid 2 weeks, because it was like 10 days to 2 weeks for the stitches. So I guess I waited the full 2 weeks. In the video I say 10 days, but I actually mean 2 weeks. So disregard that. Anyway. But it healed pretty much the same in terms of like the ease of healing, where it just had stitches. I had to leave them in for 10 days, like light coats of Neosporin, like just a little for comfort, and the Band-Aid. So it was all super easy. And this one, if you were mad when I had my parents take out the stitches, you're probably going to be even more mad when I tell you what I did to take out these stitches. So once again, obviously I didn't go back to him since he was so far away. But I also, you know, still resistant, didn't want to go to like an urgent care or anything. I think this was even a few years ago. To sum it up, I didn't go anywhere to get them removed, but it was 10 days later and it was time to remove them. So what did I do? I took them out myself. Now on my right ear, I kind of have a ridge and I couldn't see the stitches. And I was also extremely nervous, like I was terrified to take them out myself. But this one I was like, my parents did it, like that wasn't hard, like that wasn't that hard, like it was a little bit sore, but you know, it wasn't a crisis or anything. So I was like, this is definitely healed enough. Like I didn't have any like bloody spots or really sore spots. Like the stitches were just getting kind of irritating after about 10 days. So I just took them out myself, you know, a little pair of scissors, little snipping, and it just loops right out. It was super easy and I could pretty much see all of it. But I'll be honest, the downside to that was, I think it was a few days later, like I was playing around with like testing out some of my rings. Like I took the clickers out of my right ear to test them out on my left ear, because I didn't have, I had enough to maybe fill the one ear, but I didn't have enough to fill up the other ear at the time. So I was moving rings around and like seeing how it looked and stuff. And wouldn't you know it, I see a little blue thing poking out of my skin, and I'm like, pull it out with like tweezers. Oh, it was a stitch. I left a stitch in. So I don't really recommend taking out your stitches yourself, especially if it's like a real doctor procedure. You probably shouldn't do that. But if you do end up doing that, have someone look to make sure that you got it all, because it was a few days later and it was still in there and I had to take it out. Which, it's not the end of the world, because the stitches are pretty surface level and it probably would have rejected anyway. Like I probably wouldn't have needed to like pull it out of my skin eventually. But you know, why do we want our bodies to like have to reject something if we could just have someone help you look so you can take it out in the first shot? That's what happened. I thought it was kind of funny, but it wasn't the end of the world for me. And afterwards my ear healed up beautifully, like just as good as the other one. So for this one, unlike my first one where I've sort of got a little curation going, where I chose all the rings for this ear and put them in and left them in. These rings were chosen specifically to be put in this ear, and that's why I bought them, and that's where they are. My left ear has gotten a lot of hand-me-downs, but I'll tell you what I have in there currently, because to this day it's still mostly hand-me-downs from like other piercings, not from other people, but from other piercings, and from like my original clickers that I had for my right ear coin slot, some rings that I had been wearing in my conch on this ear. So I just moved a lot of that to this ear, and I'll go ahead and let you know everything in my left ear coin slot right now. So for this ear, I'm gonna go from the bottom to the top. So I just want to say, if you didn't watch my left ear tour, this bottom ring here is actually 1/4 of an inch Marie Attache 2-chain clicker thing or whatever. That's actually in my original helix piercing, and that is still open. The coin slot starts higher up than that helix piercing. So what I did to bridge the gap between them is I put slightly larger rings towards the bottom of my stack. That way the longer ring will hang down a little bit more, and it kind of fills that gap and makes it look like it kind of goes all with the coin slot a little bit. So those first two on the bottom are 2 Marie Attache clickers, both 16 gauge. Both of those are 3/8 of an inch, which is also 9.5 millimeters. So that just helps bridge the gap, because the rest of the rings are 8 millimeters / 5/16 of an inch. It's just like the next step above 5/16, and it just sort of like flows really nice, especially the way it hangs, and then the 5/16 hangs on top, and just they kind of look the same. But then that little extra length really helps, I feel like, make the whole thing look cohesive instead of like disjointed. I guess I'm not really going to do it top to bottom because there's a lot of groupings. These 5, hopefully they're all in the picture, but I have 5 seam rings that I got from my piercer. I'm not sure what brand. They're just gold seam rings, and I just wanted to fill up the slot a little bit. I didn't have much in there at the time, so I just bought 5 gold 18 gauge seam rings because they were the cheapest option at the time, and they would fill it up a decent amount. And if you look, the very top one looks the same as the other ones, but that one is actually another Marie Attache clicker. This is just the 18 gauge Marie Attache clicker, but it's the same size, 5/16. So it just looks the same. Honestly, the clickers look the same as seam rings. The only thing is clickers are much easier to move around to different piercings. A couple other rings I have in there are 2 14 gauge Marie Attache clickers, and those are from my initial purchases for my right ear coin slot, which those are really pretty, like really classic, but also plain clickers. Like these ones are so much more boring than my right ear. The next one here, just like my right ear, is the Desiree seam ring, and which is also 18 gauge. I got from the same piercer as the Desiree in my other ear. It was the same like piercer that I ordered it online. And then the last 3 rings I have, 2 of them are a pair, and I got them from Piercing Pagoda, so I guess technically I can't call these 5/16. They're kind of a little bit bigger than 5/16, but they're not quite 3/8. They're not really made the same way as others because the gems are like spiky on the inside. So they weren't really that comfortable in my right ear, but the way they hang in this ear, there's not like a lot of pressure. So I find that it kind of works in my left ear. So I got 2 of those Piercing Pagoda earrings. And the very last one I got right here is the Eclipso clicker from Tether, and this is a 14 gauge clicker. That's my left ear coin slot. Let me know down below what you think. Leave a comment to tell me which was your favorite piece of jewelry from this ear. I had kind of a lot of boring things in this one. I would say my favorite has got to be the Desiree, just because, you know, it's got stuff going on. Everything else has been just a seam ring, a plain seam ring, or a plain clicker, so I gotta choose the Desiree. But either way, let me know down below what was your favorite. Let me know down below what sort of videos you would like to see next. And I just want to thank you so much for watching this video. I love ya. See you in the next one. Bye! And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Candence L. I would really appreciate that. And thank you so much. So I'm getting my coin slot today this year. It's gonna be fun. Wearing dark lipstick is like such a struggle.